Welcome to Dubai Future Foundation.
So if we talk about vision, I want to introduce a project called 10X, and you might have heard of it. 10X mandates the government entities to think 10 years ahead. So if you talk about the Road and the Transport Authority now versus in 10 years, what's going to be their business model? How are they going to operate? How are they going to be structured?
Let me just set the tone and set the context behind this. So may I ask a rhetorical question, please, initially? When we look into the future, we look at the digital transformation that's going on and all of the wonderful things we will hear about, Fourth Industrial Revolution, AI, and so on. What are the key pillars does this audience believe is going to define the future? So if you project yourself in the year 2030, what are the top 2, 3, 4 things you believe will define the future? My view is actually a little bit more fundamental. My view is that the future is going to be defined by trust. It's going to be defined by ethics and values and empathy. You can have fintech, but if you don't have compliance and ethics, nothing is going to work. You can have blockchain, but if you don't build a structure of trust, it won't work. The science allows us to have designer babies. We can do all sorts of things going on there. But if our moral compass is not in place, if we don't know what our value systems are, it won't work. So the future is not about technology and science. The future is about humanity. And that is what the core is. Salim is the founding executive director of Singularity University. He is on the board of X Prize. He's also the chairman of ExO, which is what we're going to be talking about today.
What's happened is, I think, as we've evolved as a species, we have tools that are billions of times more powerful than, say, even 100 years ago. And therefore, how we navigate our relationships, our trust structures, is absolutely the most important piece. Jerry Mikulski is one of our world, made a really profound comment. He said, we was talking about abundance and scarcity. Yep. And he said, it's really simple. Scarcity is abundance minus trust.
These are some of the big mega trends that are taking place. Tectonic shift west to east. Urbanization, 300-400 cities are going to run the show. How does that affect, how does it recalibrate the world?
Well, I think what we're seeing on the technology side, that's quite clear. On the urbanization, in theory, we crossed a line a few years ago where more than 50% of the world lives in cities. Turns out that number was really wrong. It's not 50%, it's actually close to 90% today. Because in Egypt, a city of less than 100,000, a city of 100,000 was classified as a town or a village. It wasn't classified as a city, whereas 100,000 is reasonably urban environment. So when they recalibrate it for the actual reality, we're already living 85 to 90% in cities. What I think I see happening there, Paul Sappho, one of our good friends, made this point that we're going to see a huge de-emphasis on the concept of nation states and a huge emphasis of city-states, right? Dubai, Abu Dhabi are city-states. The Emirates becomes less relevant as a concept when you have this kind of structure.
We've actually disrupted ourselves, and we're hopefully on our way to disrupt insurance in the UAE. We see ourselves as an innovator. When I first started with the company, our ExO quotient was 24. So we were basically very archaic, very traditional, cubicles, nobody talks to anybody. We've taken 220 people, and I've just dumped them in the middle of one big massive sprint for the whole organization, and we transformed in about five months. And then, I mean, it's not 100%, but it was such a shock to the system to where we destroyed any immunity that was there. There are some backlash, but once that was done, and we have the right culture and the right ExO thinking that the organization had, then we went after things like artificial intelligence, platforms, robotics. And these are things that are not theories. What we have done at Takaful Emarat to bring things like 67% fraud detection, being able to do 85% prediction of policy pricing. There's so much that's been done. Once the mindset was right and we had the people all thinking in terms of digital and scale, like the scale and the ideas parts of kind of the ExO attributes, the sky is the limit.
Our business is a marketplace in that we're connecting users with service providers. And so as you launch a new city, you really have operations on the ground that seek to balance this marketplace every day as you go along. Now, initially, when you start out, no one believes that demand will show up through the phone. And the traditional suppliers or service providers are used to renting out vehicles for a day at a time, or are on a monthly salary with some fleet somewhere. And so initially, we have to guarantee that monthly income for a certain number of hours per day, so long as the service provider's application is open for a certain period of time and accepts bookings at a certain rate, right? So that allows the service provider to participate in the business. And then our goal is to drive enough demand to the service provider that we no longer have to pay that guarantee.
A lot of things are happening, and we are advising the global Fortune 1000 companies, and we need to be the ones that walk the talk first. So be very purposeful, focus on what are the things that will change the life of our clients, and do it. Another thing, artificial intelligence. We have a massive business process outsourcing business in India. 120,000 people only doing that globally for financial institution, insurance, and so on. One of the things we are being pressed every year is reduce the cost to serve, your marginal cost, right? Every year we want our clients want a lower fee. Then what's the way? First, automation. Everything that can be automated needs to be automated. So bringing data at the core, and two, create AI bots. And we created over these 120,000, 40,000 people jobs were automated. And then we started facing ourselves through applying robotics and AI. We started facing the things about ethical AI. What do? We have a commitment to the society and the work. So we started internally a big job about reskilling those people, right? And giving them different types of jobs that were not even invented when we started the process.
So what we found is, so just for people's benefit, if you're not familiar with the model, we looked at the 150 fastest growing companies and teased out what are the characteristics they were using. So Uber doesn't hire its own staff, or Careem doesn't hire its own staff. Google uses using algorithms. Airbnb is leveraging other people's assets. And so there's a whole market-facing set of externalities that can scale very quickly. And then a set of internal control structures, lean startup, decentralized organizations, social technologies to collaborate, etc. And we found that if you were a big company, if you fully implemented 4 out of those 10, you increased your effectiveness 10x. If you're a startup, you should be doing all of them, which is the scoring mechanism we have allows you to calibrate where you are on that metric. The way we've seen startups do it is to say use all of them, because if you're not, somebody else is. If you're a big company, the best structure we've seen is a big company appoints a chief exponential officer, and their job is to run projects on each of the 10 attributes in all of them. So just as an example, there's a company in Australia called Smart Group, which does benefits management for big companies, HR and perks and so on, which is a very dull business in a sense, B2B. How do you scale that? They have a project on AI, a project on decentralized organization, a project on lean, and every 3 months they re-up the projects. And so they've grown 10x in 3 years by applying this into a legacy environment, very boring legacy environment. So there's techniques now that we're seeing emerge that we didn't think of. They're just emerging out of the ecosystem in how do you run a new organization in this way. That's well understood. The harder challenge is taking a legacy organization and bringing it up to speed. That's the much higher order problem.